Okay, it's time to get back to the resume exercise and finish up this third iteration of it. Remember, at the beginning of the week, we went over this document, and this was phase one, and you should have completed all this by now. You should have made all the changes, got your cover letter, changed the name of it, moved it into your root folder, split up your resume into 2, maybe 3 parts, making sure each one was an independent, fully functional HTML page with all the necessary structure, and making sure this way you split it made sense for you, making sure that each page had a unique title in H1. The title in H1 will be very similar on the page. They'll be different from other pages. Yeah, there'll be some common places too. Your name will continue throughout all of them. And then I said we're going to move on to external style sheets, into a style sheet for this little site. And here we go. You've learned a lot more about CSS now, but you haven't used it very much. I know there's not much time to do any independent outside practice and play with HTML and CSS in this course, the way it's so concentrated in 5 weeks. However, if you're able to, go to some of your other files and try some of this stuff. Is the best way to learn it is to practice it. Practice typing it. See what you do wrong. Try it again. In any case, here's the overview of phase 2. I'm going to skip over embedded style sheets and go right to an external style sheet. I'm going to give you an explanation of that in just a minute. I'm going to make the style sheet, and there's some explanation about how to do it, and there's an example of the link that you will use to create it. And then you're going to write your style sheet and how you do it. I'll show you that in just a minute. And then there's all this explanation about the things I want you to do. Now, the presentation that you would have just seen earlier about CSS and text covered some of this. In fact, covered it pretty well. So you'll want to look back at that also. But look through these instructions. In a couple places, they send you back to the textbook, which is an important thing to do. You have a textbook. You have to use it at this point. And then, of course, in the end, you should have an index file, a style CSS. She'll show you how to make that in just a minute. The silhouette image will still be around, but not much longer. You got to get your own photos soon. And at least 2 resume pages, probably maybe more than that if you split it up into 3 parts here. Okay, and that will be zipped and put on Moodle. All right, let's take a look at some examples. Remember this file? Let me run it and show it to you. There it is, important AP style rules. I'm going to make it bigger, actually. Okay, just with the Control+ so you can see it a little better. This is a straight HTML file. There's no CSS in this, right? That bolding is from a strong. And it's very similar to the file that you made before, as that bolding is from a strong also. Good. I think it might be a little different, but it's very similar. Okay. But what is all this green stuff here? Well, I actually have some style stuff, but I have commented it out, so it isn't working right now. Let me comment it in, release it in other words, and you'll see what it looks like. It's very similar to some of the style things I want you to do on your page. But here's the difference. Right now, this is in the head element. See the head element? Of the individual page. You're going to be writing it in a separate page and linking that separate page to all of your files in your resume site. More about that in a minute. But what is this stuff doing at this point? Let me run it. Oops, I didn't save. Remember, you always have to save. Okay, what this has done, and now it's bigger than I need to have actually, is it's added margins, color on a heading, and H2s have color. Only that one H2 for some reason. No, there's both H2s, that's right, that's something different. And there's, look at the way this line spacing is in the paragraph. See how different that is? See how tight these are? Make these bigger. The text is tight. And by the way, it's a whole different font too, right? This is a different font. The text is looser and more air in the paragraphs, much more attractive. We've got some bolding on these definition terms. Color again. Look at these. There's different bullets here too, right? This is an ordered list. You probably won't have one. I didn't change that, but I could have changed it in CSS. There's actually lots of changes here. The sizing of the fonts, the capitalization is different. That's all CSS. Let's go through the CSS to take a look at it, because this is some of the sorts of things that you will probably do. Okay. First of all, we have a body margin. Now, we haven't gone over the box model much yet, and we're going to do a lot more about it. But just want to tell you this. This means 0 margin on the top, 0 margin on the bottom, but 25% on the sides. That's a lot. You probably want something more like 15. I'm going to save that. Now I have another body statement. Well, why do I have 2 body statements? I don't need 2 body statements. Let's put them all in the same declaration block, right? This is a font family. Verdana, another font, another font. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a little bit short. You can go, if you go to your textbook, you'll find even better font stacks, longer ones. But you're going to definitely want to set a sans serif font stack at the body level. And you're either going to just do that and leave it alone and have that be the only font, or if you change the font, you'll do it with another font stack on that individual element that you want to be different. Like, for instance, if you want a serif font of some kind on a H1 or something, perhaps. What else do we have here? We have another body statement, declaration, which we can add to our declaration block here. Font size 100%. Well, this comes down to the EM sizing method that I would like you to use. We'll join that up there. Oops, let's leave it like this. I'm only putting these in separate lines because it's a little easier to see that way. Okay, so font size 100% means let the font be the size it should be, unless we change it, and then we will change it. And I want you to size everything. I've decided I want a font size for the H1s of 1.5 EM. See, there's no space there. If there's no space there, no spaces on units. And the font size in the H2 of 1 EM. And I put the font size on all the rest of the copy, P, LI, DD, DT. I decided to size all the same at 0.875. If I use some other elements, I'd have to size those also. I also decided on the line height of 2 for all this. I consider this kind of reading copy, this basic copy. I'm not going to apply line height to the headings. If I want to change the spacing around them, I use the box model. I gave a color just in H2. I want you to use some color on something in your resume at this stage. We're going to do a lot more work with color next week. And I changed my list items, but only the UL list items, only for unordered lists, the list style type to square. That's how I got those square bullets. Please consider, you can look in your text, you'll find there's lots of options. For H1, I have some more things. Now I could combine these. In fact, probably I should. I'm going to grab all this stuff here. Stick it up here. Don't want 2 curly brackets. I like to have my tabbing nicely organized. And then I don't need this anymore. Right. What else did I say about H1? Text transform uppercase. So it's all going to be uppercase, and text align center. And then I changed the font weight of the definition terms to bold. And if you read about font weight, there's actually a lot of choices there. Okay, so if I save this and run it again, it should be the same thing pretty much, except I made the margins not quite so narrow. I mean, not quite so wide margins. So the actual text area is not so narrow. So those are, I'm not suggesting that you use these values exactly, but I want you to address all these things in this way. You want to make your margin a little different? Okay. Do you want to use a different sans serif font stack? That's fine. Do you want to use another font someplace else? Okay, one more stack, but no more. It has to be a stack. No single fonts, okay? Do you want to make, maybe you're going to make your H1 2 and then change the sizes as you go down through. We haven't done background colors yet. We'll deal with those later. But adding a color to the H2 would be a fine idea. If you want to do background color, you certainly may. If you've already read ahead, you want to do that. And so on. So okay, that's great. But this is not an external style sheet. This is a regular embedded style sheet. How do we make it an external style sheet? Well, let's grab all this information here. Whoa, just the guts of the style. Okay, I'm copying it all. I don't want this any HTML, so I don't want those style notes there, those elements. I'm going to make a file new in Notepad++ still. I'm going to paste this all in there. And so far it looks pretty boring, right? Yes, okay, but let's tell it to be CSS. Set the language to CSS, which means we'll get some of the same kinds of help that we got in the HTML from Notepad++. If it senses something is odd or funny or strange, it's going to let us know. Okay? And I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to call this Style. So lowercase. And it's going to be style, and it's going to add the CSS on its own. So now I've made a style sheet called style.css. Great. What's it doing? Nothing yet. I'm going to and now I can delete this all out. Just pretend you don't see this guy right here. Cut him out of there too. So I have no style here. Is there any style here? Let's just make sure. Run launching Chrome. And now we're back to no style at all. Okay, good. And now within the head element, I'm going to add a link to that style sheet. You can read about this in your text. REL style sheet, that means this is what it is I'm linking to. The type of thing is a style sheet. And the href is no fancy path because it's just sitting there. I named it style.css. If I remember the right word, if that's what I named it. If that's what I named it, it should work. I saved the file first, and there it is. All my styles are back again. I'm using an external style sheet. So you will make an external style sheet, probably just from scratch, not even beginning with internal style, an embedded style sheet. You'll just start with an external style sheet and begin writing those styles, and you're going to make a link like this in every one of your resume-related pages. Your index, and then other pages. The index was a cover letter, remember? It's now called index, and the other pages as you go along. Having split your resume up into 2 or 3 parts, so there'll be 3, 4, maybe even split up more. Eventually there'll be more pages, and each one will have this link to it, link on the top. And the same CSS will affect everything. What if you want something special or different on one page versus another? Well, you'll handle that with IDs and with classes, and more about that later. At least get some basic text styling and those other elements that I asked you to do, and they are here. All this stuff in here. And get it in an external style sheet, and it's split up pages, each one independent HTML page, all linking to the same style sheet.